Howdy, howdy. Sue Devil here, and welcome to my top 5 most wanted factions, or most wanted dwarf factions for the future DLC, paid LC. Really, it doesn't matter to me. These are the top 5 factions that I'd like to see come to Total War Warhammer, either in Game 3 or, most likely in Game 3 and beyond. But these are dwarf factions that I just would love to play. I'd love to see them fleshed out and, given new and interesting lore and the real treatment, as the kind of thing that, as a dwarf only player, I would really like to see given the full treatment to make interesting and worth playing. So without further ado, we'll get on to the top 5 DAOE factions that I'd like to see in the game as a fully fleshed out faction. Coming in at number 5 is Karak Ziflin. This is just, I think, would be a really interesting DAOE faction to play due to their starting position. They start right by Bretonnia Empire. They're close to the High Elves. The Wood Elves are on this side. They're the farthest west faction in the old world for the dwarfs. I think they could be made very interesting and actually quite a fun faction to play. We could go after Skarsnik right away, get into it with the Empire, or go after very close the High Elves. I just think this would be a fun and interesting faction to play. Add some lore, maybe some interesting lords, some good units, and I would absolutely play the snot out of this faction. I think they would be great fun. For number 4, I'd like to see Karak Dank put in the game. Now, I get that this is, probably completely fictional, because I don't think that in any of the lore there's a dwarf faction down here. It was put in here for gameplay. But I think this would be a really fun faction to play. They have a very fun starting position in Southern Lustria, and it is not in Mortal Empires, but it would be in the second game. There is no dwarf faction to play in the second game. I mean, I get you can play a faction on Locker and everything else like that, but there is no dwarf faction in the Vortex campaign. Not that I'd want it to be part of the Vortex campaign. I just think this is an interesting map to play on, and I'd like to see a fully fleshed out dwarf faction on this map for me to play. And I think it would be great fun. Start with all the Skaven and the Beastmen, or sorry, Skaven and the Lizardmen, and there is Tomb Kings down here and High Elves. I think it'd just be a great starting position, great fun, and a completely new map to dominate a faction I'd like to see fleshed out, especially because it is not part of canon and is really something that they could be creative about, making the lore interesting and making the additional mechanics and units very, very interesting, and it's just a faction that I'd love to play. My number 3 is Karak Zorn. The lost hold of the DAOE, the most ancient hold. I think this would be a really fantastic faction to play. It has lots of room for lore. How did they survive for so long without losing contact with the other dwarfs? What is their culture like? They have a great starting position with the Tomb Kings right here, undead. We have Skaven, we have Lizardmen again. A beautiful part of the map, highly defensible, but I would love to see this faction fleshed out. And, it's really something that could be, there's not a whole lot of information about in the lore, but, I think they could do a really good job and make a very interesting campaign out of this faction in Karak Zorn, and possibly something that you could play in both Mortal Empires and the Vortex campaign. I just think it would be incredibly fun to play these guys with a fully fleshed out faction. My number 2 is A Drac. I think this is by far the most difficult starting position for any dwarf faction that could be had. I know there's actually a great mod out there for A Drac, and it has a lot of room for lore. It could be extremely fun and extremely difficult. We're right in the very north. This is right where chaos spawns. We have well, soon to have Throg and you know, Norska proper. We have Kislev down here. We have some Skaven and Hell Pit. You know, this would be an amazingly fun campaign to play. It has a room for tons of lore, and you know, they've done a really good job on the mod. I'd love to see a fully fleshed out faction that is extremely hard to play for the Dawi. It is something that I would just absolutely adore from start to finish. I would love to play a fully fleshed out A Drac. Finally, my #1 most wanted faction, dwarf faction, fully fleshed out, is Karak Kadrin with the Slayer King, Ungrim Iron Fist. This is I've never played Ungrim Iron Fist because I refuse to play him because he doesn't have his faction fleshed out. He's not properly in the game like Clan Angrand or Thorgrim, and he's a character that I want to play, but I want to wait until they have him fleshed out and in the game properly. And I'd really like to see Karak Kadrin fleshed out. There is so much lore surrounding the Slayer King. It is a good starting position with the vampire counts right beside you. Lots of big monsters to go fight, and you know, he's a lord that I really want to play. I mean, I've recruited him in other campaigns, but I've never played him, and I will not play him until the faction is properly fleshed out and given a proper campaign. And I imagine there are a lot of dwarfs out there just like me that really want to see Ungrim Iron Fist, Karak Kadrin, and the Slayer King and the Slayer Keep properly fleshed out for a fantastic dwarf campaign. There's my top 5. I do want to make a couple of honorable mentions, or a couple of things to discuss. First of all is any Dawi out there is probably wondering why the Chaos Dwarfs aren't on this list. Really, I just wanted to go over factions that are in the game now. Chaos Dwarfs are a faction that I intend to play when Game 3 comes out. You know, from everything everyone's saying, they are definitely coming and will be fully fleshed out, and I will play the Chaos Dwarves like crazy because I think they're going to be a ton of fun. I really wanted to go over factions that exist and really could be made into cheap DLC, you know, maybe $5 a faction or $10 a faction. I mean, I would pay $20 a faction, but you know, that's because I'm adamant about loving my dwarfs, and if they gave it the royal treatment and gave it proper lore and units and made it really interesting, I would pay whatever. I mean, it really wouldn't matter to me. But these are factions that I'd like to see fleshed out that are kind of in the game already, and I do dearly, desperately want the Chaos Dwarfs to be in the game. The other thing I'd like to mention is the White Dwarf. You know, I would actually like to see the White Dwarf more like the Green Knight, someone that any dwarf faction can summon for 25 turns and he'll use his special abilities and stuff like that, and there may be reasons to get him or quests to get him, but I wouldn't like to, I don't think he's as good as a full legendary lord in the starting campaign. I'd just like to see him be part of every dwarf faction, which is what he should be. You know, something, and I know you can, in every dwarf faction, you can summon him through building a Slayer cult, but I think it'd be more interesting if he was more like the Green Knight, or if you could summon him for 25 turns at a time. As far as the rest of the factions, I mean, to be honest, I would pay for all of them. You know, make them interesting, give me some good lore, give me some good story, give me some good lines, and interesting campaign mechanics, and I'll play every single dwarf faction out there over and over and over because I love them all. So that's my top 5. Hope you found it interesting. Love to hear any comments you have on which dwarf factions you'd like to play and why, and which ones you think that would be the most fun, or do you think are the most deserving, or you know, really just overall comments. I love comments on my channel. I know we talk lots in the comments on my videos, and I definitely would love to see some of your comments on dwarf factions you'd like to see. So that's it for my video. Hope you found it interesting, and I'll see you soon.